If you're like me and use Beefy Finance to optimize most of your DeFi operations, this is the right video for you. Here, I interviewed Weso from Beefy Finance, and he talked about the team behind Beefy, the story, how everything started, how they choose new vaults, and even mainly about security. We had an amazing chat about security, about risks, about hacks, exploits, what they do to mitigate that. I think you're going to be much more comfortable in using their tool after this interview. I hope you enjoy. And if you like this video, please make sure to like it and subscribe. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Moonbeam Communities interview. Today, I have here with us Weso from Beefy Finance, and we're going to have an amazing chat about Beefy, DeFi, and everything that is working in this space. So, Weso, welcome to Moonbeam Communities.
Yeah, glad to be here. Glad to have the discussion.
Yeah, we have a very strong community, and it's very, very diverse. We have people that is very technical and very deep into finance in the DeFi world and DAOs and so on. But we do have people that is kind of starting. Moonbeam try to get the both of the worlds. Can you, before we start and jump into the questions, can you give us a brief introduction what Beefy is? Maybe like 1 minute introduction.
Yeah, no problem. So Beefy is one of the larger cross-chain auto compounders. So actually, we're one of the larger cross-chain projects. If you look by TVL size and the amount of chains we cover. So we're an auto compounder. So essentially what we do is we build on top of other yield products. Mm-hmm. So you think about like decentralized exchanges or lending protocols or anything that really offers some sort of yield, right? Most people or most protocols offer a yield in a governance token or some sort of reward, right? And so what Beefy does is you're able to deposit an asset, and Beefy will then sell whatever the reward is for more of whatever your deposit asset is. And this does a couple things. It adds to the composability layer of DeFi, right? Because now we're essentially building interest-bearing products. So since you can deposit, let's say, stables, so which is really popular right now. So let's say like Tether and USDC or something like that, in an LP position on StellaSwap, and you're earning, Stella. But really, you just want to earn more stables. But you deposit that into Beefy, we give you more stables. And now we're starting to build other products that you can build on top of Beefy, where you can essentially use our vaults or our interest-bearing now tokens as another product in DeFi as well. So that's briefly what.
Yeah, that's cool. And that was very, you reached the point, because that's exactly like I would describe probably with another 1,000 words, but that's a very good explanation. Yeah. Because basically, like most of the vaults that I see is from farming, right? Like we have like Stella, and you get rewards in Stella tokens, and those governance tokens, sometimes we don't want to have exposure in those. So what Beefy does is just get those tokens and put it back in the vault, so you increase your same position without being exposed to the tokens, right?
Yeah, so essentially this helps like protocols in multiple ways, because really the whole reason that even people offer incentives is to incentivize one, activity on the protocol itself, and then incentivize, liquidity. Because as an exchange, you need liquidity or like very deep liquidity in order to make, trading happen and be able to have like size on your trades. Same thing with like lending protocols, they need to have capital. And so, Beefy helps with that, because essentially most users just want to be able to deposit an asset and then earn more of whatever they deposit. And so Beefy helps attract that liquidity and attract that capital, and helps those protocols succeed. And then also, since we're now one of the larger diverse protocols when it comes to like chains and user base, mm-hmm. We bring a lot of like marketing exposure, especially to like new projects, because we have users from Avalanche and Polygon and Phantom and BSC and Moonriver and Moonbeam. So like all of this like diverse user base now gets to pretty much with like no restrictions, you can see every single partner on our UI all at once, and so it brings you a lot of exposure to users that might not have seen or been able to interact with your protocol before.
That's cool. And we're gonna get into this point, but I just want to highlight how smooth the process was, because I was one of the guy that created one of created a forum, a vote poll, to add one of the votes to Beefy, and the whole process. I received a lot of assistance from your team. I posted over there, all information about the Stella swap. I think it was Stella. Like how to get it. We received some votes, and you guys added to your portfolio. So I think the whole process was very smooth. And I was very glad to see like how easy it is to. Of course, if you are putting a good product, right? You don't.
Yeah. There's a couple of things. So we take security as like the highest level of regard at Beefy. So essentially we get like lots of protocols and users that come on and say, hey, like, can you create a vault for this? Because essentially we're creating, a very accessible layer of convenience for users, because we're doing everything in the background for them that they already want to do. And so they just have to deposit in Beefy and then we do everything. So there's a lot of demand, obviously, for a lot of like the farms that people are yield farming. But we take security in really high regard. So we actually go through a whole due diligence process that basically audits the protocol, make sure that we're looking for any sort of exploits. We've been around for about 2 years, so we've seen almost like every single DeFi exploit. And it's usually a few different things that are exploited. So we look for those attack vectors and we try to work with protocols to make sure that they're eliminated out of their code, or there's like sufficient time locks put into place. So we're looking actually for things that like really help partners like secure themselves, even on the operational security side. And then once they go through that process, then then we can go ahead and like build out the strategies in the vaults. And we actually have a team of strategists that get paid a reoccurring strategist fee in order to go ahead and put some of these vaults out to help us like with the amount of demand that we have.
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, definitely one of the topics here was about security, but since we already got into this, let me ask you this: like, we have some options, right? There's insurance that we can buy for Beefy vaults, but this whole security thing, and there's a security. I think you guys called SAFU, right? Security Asset Funds for Users, right?
Yeah.
And there's like a protocol that you guys follow. Can you go a little bit more in details? What does that mean? Because I see there's several steps, right?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. So any project that's on Beefy has gone through like our due diligence, which I covered a little bit, which is really like us going through the code base, going through who the token holders are, looking for any sort of centralized control functions. So anything that can like take control of user funds, making sure that that code doesn't exist or that it's sufficiently time locked. We look for like upgradable contracts, any sort of things that we've seen on the contract side that's been attackable before. Mm-hmm. We also have insurance available through Nexus and Trace and Solace for all of our chains, or for like most of them cover majority of the chains. And then in addition, we're always like actively like pursuing additional ways to maintain a high level of safety. So we'll be always looking at like other protocols, contract codes, making sure that we're kind of staying up to date with any sort of like new features and obviously any sort of like relevant news. And then making sure that's transparent, like even communicated. We even have like a DeFi debrief section inside our Discord that kind of goes over and sort of like crypto ecosystem exploits and stuff like that, so people are aware.
Right. What are your thoughts? Like, what is your vision about this risk and exploit? Because I will tell you from a guy from non-technical perspective. A lot of people, when we discuss about risk mitigation in crypto, they say like it's very risky. There's a very good chance of exploit, of hacking, and all this stuff. But when I think about Beefy and the products that Beefy creates the vaults based on, those are very like there's a kind of standard, right? When we talk about farming or liquidity pool, of course we have the risk of impermanent loss, but do we still have significant risks regarding like exploits in those basic contracts? Because I think they vary a lot between one another.
Yeah, so like actually the Beefy vault contract is the same contract. So no matter what vault you're interacting with, the actual vaults contract itself has been audited and has been tested. I mean, it's been around for a year and a half and really hasn't had any issues. And then we're actually going through another audit process with Open Zeppelin. And then the strategy contracts, they differ a little bit based upon the underlying protocol, but the functionalities are essentially the same. And so Beefy, one, we have a like a peer level review. So we have multiple strategists that are looking at the strategy contracts to make sure that we're having multiple eyes look at the strategies to make sure if there's any sort of like changes in the code that you've had some sort of like peer review on it. We do automated testing. So we do, everything has to go through like an automated testing process before it actually gets shipped. And actually we suggest that our strategists do that before they even submit a pull request. And then we do a manual testing process. So we test all the functionality manually first before everything even goes live. And then if it meets all of those requirements, it would go through like the maintainer process who does like the final checking in order to actually ship the vault live. But that's just internally at Beefy. Like there's always obviously smart contract risk when you're even like talking about underlying protocols. And so we'll try to mitigate that by either not partnering ones with like a high risk exposure or like if obviously like lending protocols, right? They need to have upgradable contracts. So we make sure that they're like sufficiently time locked. So if there was any sort of breaking changes that we'd have notification from it. And so we're actually working on some increasing methods actually for like notification on like changes like time lock submissions and any sort of like things that we're like we want to monitor certain functions on contracts so that we're always like staying aware of like what's going on within the ecosystem, especially like our like all the products that protocols that we partner with. So I mean, is there risk? Of course. I mean, like if you look at like lending protocols, even like Venus, right? There was an issue within Oracle when like the Lido crash happened. And so it affected the protocol, but they were able to react pretty quickly. So as being part of like a yield optimizer and you're building on something like hundreds of products, you're actually part of your job and responsibility is to make sure that you're actively monitoring everything that's part of your, I guess, scope. So any like protocols that you're partnered with and making sure that you're, keeping a watchful eye on any sort of things that might have changed from the initial position and security assessment you originally gave. And so
right.
we also just quickly have like a risk score on our UI.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you're familiar with that. So it does detail out like, is there like what's the level of impermanent loss risk? Is there a micro cap asset? Is it a high market cap asset? So it's trying to give you as the investor a little bit more information, knowing that there's not a real good way to completely eliminate risk, but at least you can make a more intelligent investment decision based upon like our risk assessment we're kind of giving you on the UI.
Yeah, and honestly, this is an amazing tool to have because I'm as an investor too, right? Like you guys put some risk off, for example, impermanent loss, but I can take that into consideration. But the things that I cannot, that is very hard for me to assess is has the smart contracts being audited? Like there is the strategy, like all the technicalities behind the scenes, like you guys gave in the safety score, like a very good description on that. And I do have a question regarding that. Most of it, there is one of the notes over there that you put like the complexity strategy, it's part of the safety score, but most of the times that I see it's like a low complexity strategy, right? Because it's just a regular farming, I guess, like you choose the compounding rate. What would it be? Can you give me an example of a high complexity strategy? Do we have one?
So we're working on a couple different things. So one was like a yield balancing strategy. So it would, let's say it's the same asset across multiple farms. So let's say you're farming Ethereum on different lending protocols within the same blockchain, but you don't want to make the decision on which one's like the highest yield. So instead you deposit into like that Beefy strategy and it would optimize based upon the, different yields and the yield sources of what they would get. And so like when you're adding like more contracts and then there's more like, external like forces and there's more protocols that you're working with, it's adding a layer of complexity. And so as we develop, either like yield balancing strategies or cross-chain strategies, the complexity of those strategies is going to go up. And so those are definitely like obviously in the level of complexity higher than, let's say, the traditional just depositing into like a yield farm and just harvesting that like yield reward and selling it for more, whatever you deposited.
All right, because that's what I normally do, but it's even good because I'm learning about the other projects from Beefy. Does lending and borrowing protocols, does that add some complexity because of Oracle or no?
No, so we actually don't need to use any oracles. So there's no Oracle exploit vector at Beefy. So when it's a traditional like lending and borrowing strategy, let's say that it's Moonwell or something like that, and they give you another like a reward token. In order to, they usually pay you a reward on both supply and borrow. And so in order to maximize that reward, what we would do is we would deposit on the supply side, then we borrow, like let's say 95% of what you're possible to borrow, and we redeposit it back in. So it's increasing our capital, and then we borrow again. And so that's called like looping. And so we would loop it like, let's say 4 times, which would increase our capital size, which would increase our rewards. And then we'll be able to then distribute those, like sell those for more of what a redeposit. So let's say ETH or whatever we deposited. So we have, yeah. So those like looping strategies, though they may seem complex, aren't super complex. It's just farming and then maximizing the amount of capital. And since you're just lending and borrowing the same asset, there's no really need for like Oracle, because there's like zero liquidation risk unless you were to like let it go for a long time with negative interest.
Right. Wait, so this is being very interesting, because as a person that uses Beefy in a regular basis, for most of my my DeFi operations, having all those answers, the work that you guys put behind the scenes, it's very, very interesting. And maybe talking about that behind the scenes, like I can see that there's a strategy team, there's a risk mitigation team, there's a big team. Can you tell us a little bit more about the team itself behind Beefy?
Yeah, so Beefy itself is a DAO. So the founders at Beefy left Beefy getting close to a year now. And so the DAO completely took over. So everybody that works at Beefy now is just a DAO contributor. So we came on and started getting like a reoccurring payment in USDC as part of like our DAO contributor, I guess, salaries. And so there's 16 of us. So it's a varying amount of roles. So there's strategy developers, maintainers, there's UI developers, we have a UI designer, graphic designer, marketing. We have people that work on moderation, people that are in charge of all of our our strategists. So we have, I'd say, about like a 16-person working unit, and then we have another like 14 that are either like getting bounties, so things that we needed additional like add-ons to the UI or some additional features that we don't have an internal developer for, or don't have a time for an internal developer to take on that role. So we'll do some bounding work. We have strategists that work as getting their strategist fees. And then, like I said, we have a good team of moderators that do a lot of our customer support, both on Telegram and Discord. So I'd say in totality, we're about 30 people.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. That's good to know. You mentioned about the DAO, right? And Beefy has a token. Can you tell us a little bit about the token from Beefy? Like, how does it work in making decisions, maybe voting for you? Like, what are they used for the Beefy token?
Yeah, so Beefy is a governance token. So you can utilize it to vote no matter where you have it. So across 15 different blockchains, if you hold it, if you stake it, if you have it in as collateral on my finance, you still have voting rights. And so you were able to utilize those voting rights for all types of governance votes. So you can actually go through our snapshot and look at everything that's been voted on. They have control over the protocol fee structure, control over the treasury, how we spend it. We have very active proposal discussions. So people who come and want to give some feedback. And actually it's been really great because a lot of outside feedback, people that maybe haven't interacted a whole lot, but have really good insights, have came and participated in our discussions. And then beyond that, for every blockchain Beefy operates on, we take out of the harvest rewards 4.5% fees. So 67% of that fee goes to our earnings pool, and you could stake Beefy and then earn part of the protocol earnings. So it's getting redistributed back to the Beefy stakers.
And so how this earnings is in which token? It's in the governance token.
It's actually the native token of the network. So if you're on Moonbeam, you could stake it and earn Glimmer. Yeah. And then actually we have another vault that you could stake in that pretty much stakes in our earnings pool and sells that for more Beefy. So if you really wanted more Beefy, we auto compound that for you. But all the earnings is actually distributed in the native network token. So if you're on Avalanche, it's AVAX. If you're on Moonbeam, it's Glimmer. If you're on BSC, it's BNB. If you're on Polygon, it's Matic.
That's very interesting. So but only if you stake, right? You have to stake your,
You have to stake it, yeah.
right. And is there like a unstaking period?
Nope. You could stake and unstake whenever there's no time limit. No, no vesting, no nothing.
So that's the best of the worlds when we think about governance tokens, right? Because people have mixed feelings about governance tokens, and I really feel that Beefy is answering all those mixed feelings, right? Because we do have the voting or the right to vote, and we can vote in new pools or the rewards that each protocol receives, right? But in the same time, there's reward being paid, in their own tokens, right? In the native tokens of each blockchain directly to the holders, right?
Yeah, so essentially, Beefy is a non-dilutive because we've actually fully emitted, so or fully diluted. So like, there's no extra Beefy ever going to get minted. So it's just 80,000, and 80,000 will only ever exist. And for those 80,000, you get paid part of the protocol earnings if you stake. So
okay,
yeah,
I didn't know that. So it's already full cap, right? There's no more emissions of governance tokens for Beefy.
Nope, it was fully emitted in 2020. So
and that's very interesting that the owners kind of left, and probably this was part of the strategy as well, right? To Beefy and make sure that it's a DAO, right?
Yeah, the goal is always to have the community take it over, and then organically, we've had a lot of really intelligent and talented contributors come and then stick around and want to continue to build or lead or operate as like a structured organization. And so I think the goal was always to hand it over to the community, and the community has kind of like taken it over as such and grown it since then. So since the founders have left, we've actually moved on to twice as many blockchains. So I think we went from like 7 to like now 15. We went to like, I think at the height, we had 1.4 billion TVL, and we had, we just redid our whole UI and released our V2 of our UI. So haven't missed a beat.
Digging in a lot. And what I really like about it, of course, it's the UI itself it's very pretty. So congratulations to the team behind it and the graphic designs, but also I'm able to see everything that I have in all networks, right? Like I can see my vaults and I can see all in one page, which I think is pretty neat when I stop to think about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're a cross-chain protocol, so we wanted our UI to represent like our cross-chain nature. So if you're a user, we want you to, if you're a user with Beefy, you'd be user on Beefy on multiple networks. And so you want to be able to have like a good vision of your positions on all networks, but also you want to be able to see all the opportunities that exist on all the other networks. So it's good visibility for like every single network and every single protocol to all the other users on the other networks.
Okay. Do you guys have a preference in some of the DeFi protocols? For example, I imagine that new protocols is always like a barrier, to start, because you have to do like a more due diligence and audits. But like, for example, Stellar Swap, apparently Stellar, it's with you guys like a lot of vaults. So probably if there's a new vault coming in, it's probably like the easiest transaction, like
yes. So established partners, like Stella, we can just continue to like go ahead and submit new vaults as long as the tokens are fine. So like we look also as part of like our vault process, looking at the underlying tokens to make sure that the token itself is okay to vault. But majority of times the AMMs actually, when they're putting out farms, most of the time do that work a little bit for us too, by doing like an initial analysis, and we just kind of do our secondary analysis of it. But yeah, so if you're already like, if we're already launched with Stella, it's very easy then to launch the additional farms. If it's a new protocol, if it's a like completely new code base, it definitely takes us a little while because we don't have anything to compare it to. I'd say majority of code bases are the same lately. So like you think about even like stable swaps like Curve or Saddle, you have lending protocols like Aave or Compound, and then you have like exchanges, so like Uniswap or SushiSwap or MasterChef or MiniChef. Right? So it's a lot of like iterations against pretty much like the same kind of core code, and so we can just know that majority of the code is the same, and then look for any sort of like new functions or something that somebody might have added to make sure that those are safe.
Okay. We do gonna have some protocols coming, some projects coming in to Moonbeam really short. Uniswap is coming over within maybe weeks, a month, I don't know, but it's in the deployment phase. And we also have now Curve as well with Lido Finance, right? So we have Lido, we are able to stake dots over there. We can send to a pool in Curve Finance. And I'm urging to have, maybe I will create after this interview, like in the forum, a request to open this a vault for Curve and stake dots. Do you guys have that in mind, or it's already been working?
So we actually have a close relationship with Lido and Curve.
Really?
Yeah. And so we've been already talking to Lido about the stake dot pool. So we're actually working on a few kinks in it, not on the technical side, just on the reward side, in order for us to be able to create a vault for it. But we work with them on multiple blockchains, so I'm sure we'll be able to make it happen.
All right. Yeah, excited to put my dots in Beefy. So. Do you have, I hate to ask those questions like when moon stuff, but do you have like a date or a time frame where do you think we're going to be able to see dots in Beefy?
Yes, I mean, well, for like the Lido one?
Yeah.
Okay. I'd say we're working with them now. So it like I said, it's mostly dependent on a few things that they kind of have to work out, just on like the Lido liquidity side. But once it's done, we can pretty much vault it. So I'm hoping within the next like week or two.
All right. Yeah.
It'd be nice if it could be tomorrow, but
yeah,
let's see if we can make it happen.
Yeah, that'll be nice. And hopefully, who knows, maybe Lido also add Glimmer and Moonbeam tokens over there, so we can in the future even put that, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, let's see what else. There is one thing that I think it's really good. Maybe you can touch base on it, which is Beefy ZAP, right?
Yeah.
It saves a lot of time because there's so many transactions that you have to sign and approve, to create a strategy. And with Beefy ZAP, you guys really nailed in reducing all the, increasing the user experience. Can you touch base a little bit more about it?
Yeah. So one of the core things that we realized at Beefy is that in order for us to continue to expand and to make our product even better, is we have to make it easy for the end user. DeFi is super complex. So we're already a layer of like ease of use, right? So like you don't have to yield from yourself. We harvest all the rewards and do all the background stuff. But there's also even just entering a position is difficult. So let's say that you wanted to farm on StellarSwap and you wanted to do USDC, Glimmer, or something like that. Traditionally, if you just had Glimmer, you'd have to go to StellarSwap. You have to swap 50% for USDC. Then now you have 50% of Glimmer and 50% of USDC. You go and you add liquidity. Now you have a liquidity token. Then you go ahead and you put that into the yield farm. And so it's a whole process. And then like, let's say if you wanted to compound, right? This is just doing it yourself. You'd have to harvest the Stella, sell the Stella for half Glimmer, half USDC, add liquidity again, then deposit it again. And so you're ending up with like, 9 transactions or something like that.
Yeah.
So with what we created was the Beefy ZAP. So you can come in with just Glimmer or just USDC and you deposit just that. And Beefy in the back end does all those steps for you. So we sell half of it for the other LP token or whatever else is in the LP. We add liquidity for you, create the LP position and deposit it into Beefy and give you the Moo tokens back in receipt. So as a user, all you have to do is just approve the spend of your token and then just deposit. That's it. And then we create and you enter the position. And then the back end, we just compound everything. And if you wanted to zap out, you can do the exact same thing and zap right back out to whatever token you deposited. So we're trying to make it as easy as possible, eliminate the amount of transactions and steps you have to do in order to participate. And we're trying to do that at every level. So we're trying to improve the zap functionality so that you can accept any token, not just one of the LP. We're trying to make it so that you can cross-chain zap into vaults. So we're trying to find the ways we can make even cross-chain DeFi as easy as possible with less clicks for the user.
That's amazing. Talking about that, which is next steps and roadmap, like what do you guys have in mind? What is next for Beefy? Because I see a very complete product already, with upgrades, but is there something else that you guys are thinking of?
Yeah, there's always stuff to build. So there's like more blockchains that want us to go and build on. And so, we'll try to continually, as we can, like build on more blockchains, increase our cross-chain presence. We're also working with more protocols. So as more protocols come to Moonbeam, as more protocols come to any other blockchain, we'll work with those protocols to build vaults for them. We're also like I said, we're continuously improving our UI. So the idea is to have like as much investment information as possible on our user interface. So as a user, you don't have to really go anywhere else. You could just like come to Beefy and do all of your DeFi and all of your, you see all of your income and your profitability, and you'll be able to know how much LPs are in what, and the historical APY. And so we just want to give you like everything you possibly need to make an investment decision right on the Beefy interface. And then also we want it to like be as easy to do cross-chain investing as possible. So I think what you'll see is, capabilities of being able to just deposit on one chain right into a vault on another chain, and being able to like take, you now see all these opportunities, but we're going to give you the accessibility that makes it so much easier to just go ahead and deposit and cross-chain, yield farm. So we're looking at just overall, just trying to continually improve. We're open to suggestions, but just make it like the complete DeFi cross-chain experience you possibly can get.
That's very cool. Can't wait for that. And when you mention about being able to zap from many tokens, this is the next level for sure. As a user, like going, even I feel comfortable when doing all the DeFi operations, but it's not about being comfortable, but all the process, sometimes it's cumbersome. And if you do one of the, I remember like I did once, and I said, man, I have to redo everything again. Like I had to remove because I wanted to have another pool, or because I didn't do my work and didn't see if Beefy was provided from that pool or other pool, So having that is definitely amazing. And it's very good to see all those cross-chain. I mean, you said potentially getting from, like Ethereum, right? And bring it over to DOTs. Maybe you can use ETH to buy DOTs, right?
Yeah.
To buy the ST DOTs whenever you have available.
Yeah, let's say that you're on Avalanche and you have AVAX. But really what I want to do is farm ST dot, XT dot or something like that on Curve. So we want to give you the capability to basically do all of that in one click. So bridge your AVAX, swap it, or bridge and swap, or swap on the one side, bridge over, swap to the different positions, add liquidity for you, deposit, and all you have to do is just like click one transaction. So, what can we do to make like the whole, like even just like yield farming cross-chain experience just so much easier?
And at the same time, there's also some, it's not as, because I have some, again, mixed feelings about bridges in general, because I love bridges. I think they are the ones that created the interconnected world between blockchains, but we're seeing so many exploits, right, in those bridges. And what you're proposing, I think it's really cool because it's like a spot services of a bridge, right? You are not actually like holding the other token in other places. You are actually, giving away this token and being the other chain. Like you're not maintaining the bridging connection, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's really not. So yeah, we work with partner bridges. We wouldn't actually like do any of the bridging ourselves, but or like hold the tokens ourselves. But the bridges, like there's really not a really good way to like, let's say, remove that functionality. You need to be able to move capital from one blockchain to another blockchain. Mm-hmm. A lot of the issues has been in centralized control of a lot of funds that, like, let's say it was controlled by a multi-sig or something like that, that actually didn't have enough signers that it probably should have, or there wasn't like a sufficient like locking of the funds or anything. Like there's obviously a lot of operational security issues that happen with some of these bridges. So I think like some of them obviously need to clear that stuff up. And there's obviously some that have been trusted and then been battle tested for quite a while. So there's always going to be like bridge risk. And if you want to have, let's say, ETH tokens on Moonbeam, you're going to need to bridge them, right? Now it's, working with what we would think like the most trusted and battle tested bridges in order to, do whatever the facilitating the transactions we do. So
yeah, that's a good thought. Again, as a non-technical person, we read the headlines, right? And there's also like bridge attacks over there.
Yeah.
The truth is, like most of the attacks is like you said, right? There is some conceptual issues over there, and not necessarily like, if you just, again, I go back to what I believe is right, which is like smart contracts being created for so long time, and it's been battle tested for so many, situations, that we are really creating a standard like Open Zeppelin. You guys mentioned a partnership with Open Zeppelin. So we have those, standards being created that it's really hard to, to hack or exploit. So what are your thoughts? Like most of the exploits that we see is related to these issues, fundamental issues about behind the scenes.
Yes, so it's actually, I was reading on Twitter, like, basically they said like Web2 hacks that are affecting Web3, because especially like if you look at the Harmony one,
Yeah.
it was people who gained access, or well, this is at least what we think we know, is that people who gained access to private keys that were able to sign for a majority of the wallet in order to like send the funds to themselves essentially. And so what we're seeing is that, even like opening a Google Doc, can put your computer at risk. And so it's your traditional security things that you need to like take into consideration. So opening like malicious emails, or opening documents that you shouldn't, going to like the wrong types of websites,
Yeah.
like traditional like Web2 type like hacks are what's affecting, and then people gain access to private keys and then are able to like facilitate transactions and do like Web3 type hacks. But like what happened with Harmony wasn't even a smart contract exploit. It was somebody got access to their keys some way, and then was able to like sign the transactions on their behalf. So it's like not even like you could just mitigate it by like getting an audit, because it's really not even like an auditable hack. It's just a traditional like operational security issue. So
yeah, and are all those bridges controlled the same way with a multi-sig, or how people mitigate those issues? Because again, having a function in the smart contract that can withdraw all the funds,
yeah.
and if there's a multi-sig with 5 people and 3 needs to make a decision, or let's say whatever, people are susceptible to hacks. They cannot necessarily hack the person, but their family, and threats and all this stuff. So how do we mitigate that, or what people are doing?
Well, so some of the bridges have more nodes than others. So you have like people that are verifying that the transaction's legit. So I'd say like the more like broad we can make it, and it's like more of a diversified set of like people who are like verifying. So it's the same thing with like a blockchain, right? If you have 50 people that are validators, but 40 of the validators are controlled by the same party, then it's really not like a decentralized blockchain, right?
Yeah.
And they can pretty much just take control whenever they feel like it. It's the same thing with bridges. Like if you have the people who are signing with these transactions are legit, it should be, decentralized and diversified, and the signers. And so I think that, there's a lot of like, I think, work to be done on, making sure that all the bridges are secure as possible.
Yeah.
But at least as like a user, if you really wanted to go do some research, it would be like making sure that they have a broad base of like nodes or signers, for verifying transactions. And then, if you look at like, Avalanche says that they actually break up like their signature with like Intel, I think of that SGK. It was like it basically breaks down the key into multiple parts. It makes it impossible to like supposedly like get access to. So I think like some of them are trying to take like traditional security, like Web2 security, and like implement those things if they have like a very privileged, controlled like account that needs like to have extra security enabled. But what we're seeing like now, I mean, even look at the front end attacks of websites, like it's just people like taking control of your DNS and stuff. So it's like traditional hacking that's being done on Web3. It's not necessarily just like smart contracts, which is what I think everybody kind of thinks.
I see. Yeah, very interesting. Very, very interesting approach. Yeah, because I didn't know like all these details. And again, it's making more decentralized, a multi-sig more decentralized, right? Adding more nodes and more people to it. And this is a very good way to mitigate risks, right?
Yeah, 2 signers is probably not great.
Yeah. And they shouldn't get the same plane, right? When they travel.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I guess this is pretty much it, Weso. I mean, it's been a very good chat, and I learned a lot, definitely more and more confident about Beefy, and the next steps. Do you have any final words for our community?
No, I mean, we love building on Moonbeam. We were an early adopter over on Moonriver, and we always had the intentions of launching on Moonbeam, and we're able to do that as soon as we had an opportunity to. The ecosystem's has been very kind to us, and we've grown in TVL pretty consistently there, and the protocols on Moonbeam are really great to work with, and met some of them actually in person at some of the conferences. So we're looking forward to, I think, everything that we can possibly build together, increasing the composability on Moonbeam, building even more complex products, and making it like where anybody on any blockchain can have access to any of the protocols that exist on Moonbeam.
That is great. And I really look forward, like for those all cross-chain operations. That is what Moonbeam's about. It's about create a world of cross-chain, multi-chain world.
Yeah, it's only beginning, right? We're just starting.
We're only start, for sure. Hey, Weso, it was a pleasure to talk to you today. Hopefully we can meet up in one of those conferences, who knows?
Sounds great.
And talk to you soon.
All right, thanks.
Thanks.